Now, when you talk about first class citizens, see, here's the thing about this. Many of us who are out there, been out there studying and reading and gathering all types of information. Uh, a first class citizen is how the prophet Noble Drew, through his divine knowledge, put us in. There's an old saying that the old Morse used to say. He says, the prophet himself says, and I quote, he said, I stole you through the back door while the watchdog was sleeping. It would take you a long time to understand what I've done, because they were watching everything that he did, every step that he made. They were watching, and if they weren't watching, they had people watching. For example, Claude Green Bay, who was one of the primary watchers. He was watching for a society that was known all over the world. And that society is known by many different names, but their business was to control the world, especially what they consider grassroots organizations, as the Moorish Science Temple of America. Well, they were watching so much of what the prophet Noble Drew was doing that they told the postman to change it. I think I've told this story before, the truth rather. They told the postman not to bring his mail where he lived, which was 3603 Indiana, Chicago, Illinois, but instead to bring all of that mail to 3140 Indiana, which is about 6 blocks from where he lived. And if they brought it to 3140 Indiana, the one who managed the whole building was Claude Green Bay. He was the butler of Julius Rosenwald, who was a very influential person globally. And they would watch to see what he was doing and how he was doing it. Now, to really get a great picture without going deep into Julius Rosenwald, you'd have to look back at Booker T. Washington, who was his great friend, and a few other Europeans, Jews and non-Jews, who made a strong effort to educate our people, the masses of our people, who were simply just not educated. And Booker T. Washington, from what we got at Chicago Historical Library in section where materials are very highly classified and guarded. I was there last month all day long researching. Julius Rosenwald was the one who bought the prophet's land to build the first temple on. So when he speaks, he says, the European are helping me, why not you? It is your property. I'm kind of going fast forward. And he had the land set up where in order to build on that land, you would have to be a religion. That land is still vacant today. But he had that much political power. So they were watching everything that the prophet did, even how his filings came. Everything he did, they watched him very closely, because whatever he was doing to liberate our people, they were 1 foot in, 1 foot out. But mainly, the only reason was for that was that they can control us, like Saul Alinsky. Saul Alinsky, a Jew, wrote a book about the rich, the so-called elite, super elite, wanting to control our people's grassroots organizations. And how they did it was they plant people in there to watch, make them watch to see every step that we took. I believe through my studies and gathering information that that's the reason why the prophet did what he did on July the 20th, 1928, in terms of making us a real nation as a jural society, Jural. He said the nations of the earth would not recognize you without I, the prophet, being head. That's why on your nationality card, the only signature you have or that you need is his name. There is no need to sign a nationality card with your name. You didn't issue it. It's not from you. He said they are watching me and hoping that I would bring you out of the darkness into the marvelous light. And they was, because they knew who he was. They knew what he came here to do. The greatest issue they had with our prophet is to control what we were doing. All of the members in the organization, and I'm going to stretch out and say this without violating Act 4 of our additional laws, uh, of the so-called Nation of Islam, are Moors. They are Moors. See, when the trains start coming down the track that the prophet set down there, you couldn't stop it. You may be able to split the rails going another way, but it's the same people. So just think, perhaps if all those people were Eels and Bays, and then the Prophet's Moorish Science Temple of America as a jural society, and not as a religious not-for-profit corporation of 1944. That's not the same. A second-class citizen is one that doesn't have the rights as a first one. We know that. That means that you have to have certain documentation, things to be renewed every so often to be even classified as some kind of citizen, in which we see that with our people who call themselves Negro, Black, and Colored, and are recognized as a citizen by time. All citizens never needed a Voting Rights Act. Only one that need a Voting Rights Act is those who did not know that they were a citizen, or did not have, comply with just soli, or just sanguinis, the right of birth and the right of blood, which is a legal right. And that's known by your name and your religion. And our people never had that. So quite naturally, even to this day, they vote and they act as a citizen under granted privilege. And these are the things that the Prophet Noble Dread explained to us in some of his editorials about citizenship and where we will go with it and where we should be with it. See, you may have a gash on your wrist from working and things like that, but you can't put a Band-Aid on and expect for it to be healed. So consequently, many people, abolitionists and people who say they're for the rights of our people, to attempt to educate our people to fix cars and to farm is good. But that is not just one of the things that we can do. And we also avoid, and in the same sense, we also avoid being hoop jumpers, just going to college and say, oh, we went to college. We are involved in progressive, or we should be involved in progressive work and industrious work to build our nation, to enrich our people, as we always have been. And through the Moorish Science Temple of America, that is one of our seven laws, that we must be industrious. Make your own business, do your own thing, educate your own self, not do your own thing, but do your own thing that benefits all of us. Because if one of us are very wealthy, then all of us should be very wealthy. And all of us should enjoy citizenship like any other citizen. The Voting Rights Act, as we know, is for those people who don't know. Now, go back to 1870 of the naturalization law. Even those people who were classified as free white people, they didn't need a Voting Rights Act to vote. So why you need it? You didn't need it. So what are you really after? And the same, and every time you look at the epithelial look of our situation, you find that it's going to always pop up in a remedy for that, in terms of who is the first class citizen, who is the second class citizen, who is a citizen. The remedy is going to always pop up to the teachings of the Prophet Noble Dread. Even with reparations, that's going to pop up. How can you have reparations and you never knew what your nationality was? You never said who you were. But yet you hear argument from some of our learned people, so to speak, that we want reparations. We have to have reparations because the Japanese had reparations. They use them all the time. But we know that Japanese come from a country called Japan, with a flag and a constitution. Of course, they had to get what they're supposed to have in terms of the monetary values. How can you come from black to black and expect to have some kind of reward? Impossible. You have to say what you were first. So we had a long discussion with Dr. Nawabi about that a few months ago, a heated one. And it lasted about 6 hours straight, non-stop. I enjoyed every moment of it because he tried to take the position that reparation here and now for all of us. For what? What are you being reprimanded for? You have to state your free national name and religion before the constitutional government. And everywhere you look at that situation, it's all law. And we stated 2 laws is in your law dictionary, just soli and just St. Guinness, the right of birth and the right of blood. And we are taking advantage of that through being a member of the Moorish Science Temple of America, which is a jural society, a religious society, and we can do that by law, and we're doing that. I know I've kind of bounced back and forth different areas, but those things needed to be talked about, needed to be discussed. Voters' rights now for many of our people who have not proclaimed their free national name before the constitutional government I mean, they have to look at it this way. If I was what do I want this now? Do I want this for me now, and then the next generation, my children, don't have it because they may take it away? Right now, the Supreme Court was right in taking that away. You know, it forces our people to proclaim their nationality like all other free national citizens. The prophet spoke about that. He says, all citizens are forced to proclaim their free national name before the constitutional government. Why not you? Why not you? It is your issue too. You should be doing it too. If the Italian Americans are doing it, the French Americans are doing it, why not you? There is no such nationality as an African American. That is not a nationality. It is not. Africa is a continent. It's not a nation. And in that continent, there are so many nationalities and free national people there. But we do know along the West Coast, before the colonialism, that was, and we still consider it as part of the present Moroccan Empire, which is a whole nother story of why we are Moors coming from the West Coast of Africa.